Alabama 55, LSU 17 yesterday. Really backed up one of the age-old adages out there, the old if you come for the king. It's okay. It's okay to come for the king, but you better not miss. Because if you miss and you don't take every single breath out of the king's body, then he's going to take every breath and then some out of your body when he finally gets up and dusts himself off. If you didn't watch this, don't go back and watch the replay. With your children around, at least, don't go back and watch the replay. If you don't make sure that you take care of it, and you don't salt the earth, and you don't completely overtake things when you have the chance, then they're going to name a charity event after you down the road. Because that's about what's left of LSU after last night. It reminded me of that scene from Office Space. Those of you who have seen that movie know exactly what I'm talking about. And even if you don't, you've probably seen at least the movie scene that I'm talking about from Office Space, where guys are just fed up. And they're disgusted with their current employment situation, but they can't do anything about it. You know, you can't walk in and you can't take a baseball bat to your boss, so what do? Well, you take a computer. The computer you hate, which is symbolic for everything that you hate about your life and your work situation. And you take it out into a field and you take a baseball bat and you just take turns beating on the computer. Now, truthfully, after a few whacks with a baseball bat to a computer, the computer's dead and gone. But that doesn't stop you from beating on the computer. And then you hand it off to your buddy, and then your buddy beats on it, and there are pieces all over the place, and then third buddy steps up, and by that point it's just a bunch of debris, and that's kind of what it was like by halftime last night. There was just LSU all over the field. It's the best way I could describe it. Kind of gave you a heads up this was coming. Now, that's not some great prediction. That didn't really take any kind of rocket scientry, new word for the show tonight, because they were favored, they being Alabama, by about 29.5 or 30 points. It wasn't that they were going to win. It wasn't that they were even going to cover, although they did, and maybe some people had questions about that, with it being such a historically high line, especially for this series. What we told you was there's a little bit different way that game was being handled. Very rarely, if ever, aside from maybe the build-up to an SEC or national title game, have I felt collectively what I felt coming out of Alabama last week, talking to some folks around the program. This was not a normal game. It was never treated as a normal game. Some of you saw that clip from Nick Saban pregame when I think it was the CBS crew that got a hold of him as he was walking into Tiger Stadium. And he said the kind of stuff he never says publicly before. Behind the scenes, he says this stuff all the time, but he said something to the effect of, they probably think, based on what they did last year, they got a good chance to hang with us. They probably think they can beat Alabama. So I guess what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change the way they think about that. That's about as close as you'll ever hear Nick Saban to kind of publicly stating a result-oriented goal. They're really big on that around there. If you've ever listened to him speak, especially in like a clinic setting, he's really big on telling you, forget all the result-oriented goals. Get those out of the way. Just be process-oriented. And if you're process-oriented, the result will take care of itself. Well, last night, that was about as close to a result-oriented, publicly stated goal as you'll ever hear from him. And there's some beauty in that, because think about what you're telling your team. Think about what you're ingraining into their mind. What you're saying is, let's not score this many points. Let's not score that many points. Let's not put up this many statistical anomalies across the board. And let's not even necessarily win the game. Let's just change the way someone thinks. Because truth be told, most of the time, even if folks think they can beat Alabama, they're probably not going to do it. But if you don't think you can beat someone, folks like Saban, or anyone for that matter, know you're dead. You're dead and buried already. And gone, as he would say, gone. The first half here was a pure and utter splattering. These numbers are, well, they're pretty much Xbox in nature. 470 of 492 total yards possible. So I want to reiterate this. This is a stat we've only used twice on the show. Earlier this year, we said it about them in the Ole Miss game. Let me reiterate. In the first half, if Alabama were to have gained every possible yard they could gain, they would have gained 492 yards. Okay? Start where the drive starts, score a touchdown every drive, 492 yards. They got 470 in the first half of the game, not the whole game. So that's 95% of total possible yards that they gained in the first half. Mac Jones, in fact, a lot of their guys put up stat lines, the likes of which in Saban's first few years, they never had happen in entire games, to show you how much the game has changed. Jones, 338 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half. Devonta Smith, alleged non-Heisman contender still, Devonta Smith, 7 catches for 219 yards and 3 scores. It was 45-14 at the half, and I looked over both shoulders, even though I was here alone watching the game, because I was halfway worried I was going to be deposed as a witness for what I just watched on this TV screen here. Devonta Smith is surging statistically. He's surging right now. And think about what that means. He's surging. He's putting up the best numbers of his career, and it's been just a completely insane career. And he's doing it without Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle goes down in the Tennessee game, and the first reaction is you look at the schedule and you say, all right, they'll probably be able to beat most of these teams, but it could be a red flag. It could be sort of the old canary in a coal mine if we look at their production. And Devonta Smith's having trouble getting open. A lot of teams are bracketing, doubling him. Well, they're doing that. It just doesn't affect him because that's what great players are able to do. They kind of transcend a lot of what conventional wisdom is, and that's him. If you argued with me that he is the most impactful receiver that's come through the program, I wouldn't disagree with you. You're talking about Julio Jones, you're talking about Amari Cooper, that kind of rarefied air. I don't know that anyone's had an impact on a game-in, game-out basis, and certainly done it 4 years now, and done it consistently as Smith has. He came in as a true freshman, and he won the national championship game on the 2nd and 26 play. I mean, that's certainly the highlight of most guys' careers, and yet when you talk about Devonta Smith these days, people remember it, but that's not even the first thing they go to anymore. You know how good you have to be to not overcome that, but kind of paint over that with the rest of the tapestry of your career? I just want to say this. I'll move on because I've beaten this dead horse even worse than Alabama beat LSU last night. If you got a Heisman vote out there, you're looking at the best player in America there right now, number 6 in Crimson. Best player on his team, best player in America. So they, like Colin and I were talking about before the show, you're going to have probably one of the laziest arguments in all of sports awards season is, well, you know, it's got to be a quarterback. No, the Maxwell Award has to go to a quarterback, just like the Biletnikoff has to go to a wide receiver. They have this entire culture of award season where there are individual trophies for individual position groups. You then have a trophy in the Heisman that's supposed to go to the most outstanding player in college football, and yet you still have guys that really kind of channel their emotion and channel their energy into, well, let's find a quarterback here. Man, that Smith kid, that's too bad he's a receiver. Tell you, if you changed one thing and one thing only, if you just put him on more preseason magazine covers, if you just made him the preseason favorite, just change that. Keep the season for everyone the same. I think you would probably not be shocked to find he'd probably be running second or third at worst right now because that's how lazy that process is. But we don't talk about it a whole lot here. I just kind of been bothered by it, but Devonta Smith's going to be okay. He doesn't mean me fighting for him. I do not agree. As much as I praise Alabama, I don't buy this notion that they're an unbeatable team now. I don't believe that at all. Now, I think there are very few teams out there capable of beating him. In fact, there may only be one. There may be 2 or 3. They will be favored over anyone they play. They are unequivocally the best team in the SEC. They are unequivocally, well, to me at least, the best team in America right now. I'm not taking that step that some of you are taking and saying that they're unbeatable. I remember that song and dance back in 2018. They got run out of the building out in California by Clemson. They're really good. They're really good. But, I mean, LSU had some offensive success last night. That certainly wasn't going to change the outcome of that game. Alabama was without a number of coaches. So who's to say that, you know, Josh Jobe may be out of position without his position coach and in position with his position coach? I don't know how that impacts the game. It certainly didn't impact the final. But if you get a hot quarterback and a balanced offense, Florida has half of that equation. If you fit both of those and you're opportunistic defensively and you've got comparable athletes to them, you could beat them. You probably go in the game as a 9 or 10-point underdog. You can beat them. It can be done. Clemson can beat them. Ohio State can beat them. They got to have a lot of things go right. But don't buy into that. It's an unstoppable force here. It's not WrestleMania. We're not billing a main event. Okay, this outcome's not predetermined. They're going to have to play the game still. LSU, meanwhile, I was looking at my inbox, which prompted me to put something out on Twitter. I had a couple of folks ask me what I thought about Ed Orgeron's future. Now, let me tell you what I think. I think exactly what I thought in the preseason. I didn't think that it was going to be as disastrous as this, but I said the worst case, if it comes to fruition, won't matter. That's what winning a championship does for you. And that's exactly what has happened. And that man still has a national championship ring, and you've got all the memories, and they've got the banner, and like everything about last season is still there. It's etched in stone, no matter what's happening right now. Now, they are bad, But yet, in retrospect, when we look back at all they had to deal with externally, coupled with COVID and coupled with all the NFL departures, all the opt-outs, like, I don't know what best case would have been this year. So here's what he's certainly going to have the opportunity to do. He's going to have the opportunity to correct a very, very bad decision in hiring Bo Pelini as his head coach, who made over $400,000, or $46,000. It wouldn't quite be that much. $46,000 per week is currently what Bo Pelini is bringing in. And it'll be more when you have to buy him out, but that's what they're going to have to do. So I think they'll be okay. They, more importantly, really believe they're going to be okay. Because here's what they point to. Number one, things are back to normal next year. We'll get spring. We'll get everything balanced out and calibrated. Number two, we'll get a better coaching staff in here. Expect those moves to come pretty swiftly. Number three, not this week, mind you, but pretty swiftly. Number three, they point to recruiting. And they're right to point to recruiting because they're rolling. I mean, they're doing really well in recruiting right now. And there, to my knowledge, has been no kid that has been turned away and publicly or behind the scenes stated, I'm not going to LSU because I'm turned off by the current direction of that program. Like, I loved what I saw last year. I was a junior in high school, but now that I'm a senior and it's decision time, I'm not feeling it. That could change. We got early signing day coming up about a week and a half, 2 weeks. That could change. But for now, I don't see that.